something a bit different today. I just thought I'd do a quick video because we've done some quite long and in-depth ones. So this one's a little bit simpler, about something that I don't often feature on the channel, video games, or just one particular video game. But I'll show you that in a second. I just want to go further back though, quite a bit further back. And I was thinking, what's the first video game that I remember seeing in an arcade? I'm going to say around about 1977. It was that gunfight game where you've got a cowboy at either side of the screen shooting across to one another with a stagecoach going up and down in the middle. And then there was Sea Wolf, a submarine game with a periscope you had to look through, although I was too short to be able to see through that one, but I do remember that one being there as well. So that's my first memories of the arcades, but of course arcade games go back earlier than that. Really the first successful one being Pong, and that's what we're talking about today. I got hold of one of these Pong countertop arcade games. They're from Arcade 1-Up. They've been out in the US now since 2021. It plays Pong and a few other games. And it's just something that I always kind of wanted. Yeah, I did have an early home console system with a load of variations of Pong. And I had this dream, I remember back in the early 80s, the idea of having a portable Pong system really appealed to me. Something that I could take to school and play against a friend with a little flat screen on it. Of course, I was way ahead of the technology for what could have been made back then. But effectively, that's what this is. It's got an 8-inch LCD screen on it. It's got analog spinners either side. It's got a number of built-in games. I think it says 6 there, one of which is Tempest, which seems to stick out from the others because they're like Pong, Pong doubles, Pong Sport, a Super Breakout. So just going to have a quick look at this. The reason I've got this is because I noticed it was in a discount at the moment on Amazon in the US. I use a company called My US to get stuff from the US that isn't normally available here. Just to fulfill an idea that I've had in my head since all the way back to the very early 1980s, my own little Pong machine. So here we go, let's have a look. I'll just mention the games here, as we said before: Pong, Pong Doubles, Pong Sports, Warlords, Super Breakout and Tempest. Of course, these are all Atari properties. It would have been nice to have some properties from other companies that use analog controllers. An example that I can think of would be Arkanoid. That might play well on this, but of course, that's not going to happen. Anyway, let's open it up and have a look. Gotta say, this seems a bit temporary. You would have thought you'd have a proper socket somewhere on the machine rather than this thing hanging down. Of course, it runs off DC, 5 volts, 2 amps. We'll see if this power adapter is multi-voltage or if I have to swap it out for one of my own. Yeah, that's multi-voltage, but with it being 5 volts, 2 amps, if you had the appropriate USB to barrel plug adapter, you could power it from that. But might as well use this one for the moment. So there's our 1-player and 2-player volume control, which is a momentary switch. Power headphone output. Got a loose screw there, so that's great. That just needs tightening up a little bit, but yeah, not too sure about the quality of this thing just yet. Now, all this wood grain, of course, is just stickers, but it is on top of wood as well. And it does have a decent weight to this thing. You'd think it wouldn't shift around too much. However, it does glide about because for some reason they've put these gliders on the bottom of it rather than rubber feet. So that might be something to swap out at some point, but it doesn't matter for the moment. Now, there is a big protective covering over here. Of course, this display shows a current game in progress so that it looks interesting through the box, but it is a sticker that needs to be removed. So let's take off this protective film. And you know what, it's probably best to take these screws out of here because then we can take the film off a little bit easier. So I'm afraid there's no elongated peel session for this because we're just going to do a little bit, then pop the screw back in each time. Right, but that's not the end of it because we've got some protective film on these buttons as well. In fact, the A comes off, which I don't know if that was a good idea. Now, that is quite a small screen considering the overall size of the cabinet. You would hope they could go a little bit further out with that, but nevertheless, that's what we've got. So let's plug the thing in and see what it does. Rotate spinner to select game. Right, well, let's start right back at the beginning with Pong. So if you press the right button on it, I get this screen here with a number of different options. And then if I press the left one, we go straight into it. Yeah, so we get a little screen telling us what to do, and we're going to press the 1 player to continue. It's not going to look good on camera, this, is it, at that angle? Of course, like anything, it's more difficult than you remember. I remember longer paddles for some reason. And that's super sensitive. I think I'd have to turn that down a little bit. I don't know if I should just lose this game and knock the sensitivity back a little bit, because that's crazy. I'll have a look at the instructions, see if there's a way to quit a game once you're in it, and then we can change some settings. Hold player 1 for 5 seconds to return to menu. Okay, that's what we needed. Ah, there we go. Right, so let's just change the sensitivity on that one a little bit, because that was ridiculous. Move it to 5. That feels a bit better. Yeah, that's more like it. What's going on? I don't like the way the digits are where the bat is. You would have thought you'd better put those a little bit more towards the centre. That's annoying. Do you ever get into this situation with your friend where it just went on forever and you could just leave it going and go and have your tea and then come back and it's still playing Pong, and it's down to one of you to break first and be the person who applies spin to it? So I'm going to do that now. Oops, missed it. There we go. Right, Pong doubles. I seem to think that's probably the one with 2 bats on it. Let's have a look. Yeah, I could have swore these bats were longer on the original. It just shows that I must have been playing some knockoff version, or one of those ones that was on a home video game where you could adjust the length of things. And of course, this is a 2-player game, so that's not very much use with just one person here. Let's go back to the main menu. It really could do with a button on this that just takes you back to that menu without having to hold one of these things down. But let's move on there. We'll round off Pong with Pong Sports, if I can get to it. There we go. Oh, this is like a home console, really, isn't it? We've got all these different variations. Are these off the Atari 2600? Looks like it, doesn't it? I do remember there being like a basketball one, I think. There we go. Give that one a go. I don't think this is something I'm going to be playing regularly. Oh, I get it. It's like 2-player again, so this is no use. All right. Oh, bum. Yeah, okay, that doesn't look like a lot of fun. And we're back to normal games of Pong again. Hold the left button while hitting to make the ball go faster. Okay, well, we'll try that one. Wow, that's an even shorter bat than usual. That's ridiculous. How come the computer gets so wide a bat than I do? Doesn't seem fair, that. Here's me arguing with the 1970s. I can see why I've got a smaller bat now, because I've got the advantage of that extra fast shot, whereas the computer doesn't. But you're just going to time it just right. And if you can get it, it's almost guaranteed to go past them. But you're just going to time it perfectly. Let's do Super Breakout first, then we'll move on to these last two, which are not so block and ball oriented. At least I don't think so. I can't quite remember Warlords. Oh, I can see on this they've replicated the way the colours worked in the arcade with the vinyl overlays on the screen. So that's the yellow section there, that's the green part up there. And you can see as the ball travels through, perhaps, that the ball changes colour according to the bit that it's travelling past. I should be paying more attention, I think. Okay, Warlords it is then. Let's move on. I think it might have been 4-player in the arcade, this. I can see the Atari logo at the top there, so perhaps I have to put it this way round. I can kind of see now why they got the wire hanging off like this, because if it was hard wired into one particular side, you couldn't move your cable around. But still, it's a bit of an inelegant solution. Oh yeah, I get it. You protect your castle. Right. So that's mine up there. Okay. I don't know why I'm losing so badly here, but this is the very first time I've played this game, and it's bringing back very vague memories of seeing it in an arcade and not really understanding what it was about. And I do get the idea of it now, but I think it'd be better off with 4 players, or at least 2. On your own, it seems a little bit uninteresting, perhaps. But let's move on. Right, so now we're on to Tempest. Question is, which way up is it this time? I think it's this way around. It's amazing how far things have come by 1980 compared to the stuff that was out in, say, 77. Yeah, that's more my speed. Leisurely. Now, throughout this video, I've been angling the screen up towards the camera to get the best possible image, but of course this thing is supposed to be played horizontally, and when you put it like that, it gets quite a bit more difficult to see. With this being an LCD screen, it doesn't have the best viewing angles. If this was an old CRT-based cocktail arcade cabinet, you'd probably be able to see it from this angle, but it gets pretty tricky to see what's on the screen. I'd imagine if you were playing against another person, you'd have to sit quite close together to be looking down on the screen rather than from the sides, and then you're going to be almost butting heads in the middle, given the fact this thing isn't all that wide. Yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to trying to play a game on a screen at this angle, but it isn't impossible, it's just a little bit tricky. Let's try Tempest. The black background is grey, and the wireframe graphics therefore don't show up particularly well against it, and I'm pretty much guessing what's going on the screen. It's almost impossible to play at this angle. I managed to find the appropriate USB to barrel plug lead, so I attached this up to a portable power bank, which gives me the portable Pong machine that I could have only dreamed of when I was 10 years old. Now, Pong only really works properly as a two-player competitive game, so naturally I needed someone to play against. The missus drew the short straw, so had a game of Pong against her. Now, we both remember playing it in the late 1970s. We were around about the same age. It took her one game to get used to the rather sensitive controls, but by the second game we could have a proper go at it. And around halfway through the second game of Pong, she looks up and says, "This is miserable, isn't it?" And you know what? She was right. I couldn't disagree. It seems like in the last 40 or so years, our enthusiasm for Pong has evaporated. We tried a couple of the other games as well, but our enthusiasm was unaltered. This was a bit of a bust. There are certain itches that you feel the need to scratch. But then when you finally get the chance to do it, it turns out the itch had long gone. It was just the memory of it that remained. I had a good feeling going into this that this was a bad idea, but for some reason I just had to find out for myself. And it turns out that nostalgia isn't what it used to be. Now, I could get bogged down in talking about how the screen is too small, or it's difficult to see, or the controllers need more weight on them, it needs a separate menu button. You can think of a number of improvements to this device, but still, it's all academic, because really it's an experience that's probably best left in the past. It's a bit like meeting a friend that you had when you were 10 years old, your best friend, and you haven't seen them since, and then if you see them now, you've got nothing at all in common with them. It's a memory of a time and a place and an experience that just can't be brought into the harsh light of the modern day because it just disappears. So there you go. That's the Pong console. Yeah, I do regret buying it. But, you know, sometimes you just have to find something out for yourself. And now I've found it out, I've got less money in the bank and I don't ever want to play Pong ever again. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.